Today we're going to tackle probably one of the hardest concepts that we're going to cover in this course. After this, it actually gets easier. But the concept of queries is very, very important. In units 1 and 2, we learned how to get data into the database, how to create tables, load it with a bunch of data, maybe even import data from a bunch of different places. But at some point, you're going to want to get data back out. And looking at it in datasheet view is great, but sometimes that doesn't tell you everything. And imagine sometime in the future, you've been using this for a couple of years, it's got 50,000 records in it, and you only want to see the records for December of 2015. It would be a real pain to have to scroll through all the ones that are not the ones you want to find the ones you do want. And there are other things that Access can tell us using queries. Query is just another name for a question. Using queries, there are other things Access can tell us that you cannot get from just scrolling through datasheet view. The book does a few other things to get started, so let's do those first. I have taken the test. I have done the project. If you're taking the test, do the practice. Trust me. I failed the test. Then I took the practice and go, oh, that's what they meant. And I aced it. Not everything that's on the test is in this lecture, but I'll try to squeeze most of it in there. There's actually one question at the end that somehow snuck in that's from the next chapter. But it's also in the practice, so if you learn how to do it in the practice, you'll be okay. Or you can do the project. It doesn't have any sneaky stuff in it that doesn't belong there. Some of you are having trouble posting those projects. Just make sure you save them and you can send them to me and I'll grade them. But if you should be getting your grades on those within 10 minutes. If they're not there, email me, let me know. All right, a couple other things. The first things that the book wants us to get out of the way. Everybody have your databases open, ready to go? Take that as a no. Yeah, the first thing the book wants you to know about is the difference between edit mode and navigation mode. When you're in datasheet view, and when you're running queries and you're in a data set that's a result of a query, there are two modes that you can be in. One for navigating around and one for editing data. It's nothing terribly complicated. Let's open up the patient table. And notice when you start, the first patient ID is selected. And if you use your arrow keys, left and right, up and down, you'll jump one field at a time. If you click in there, however, just click inside that number and use your arrow keys, you move one character at a time. It's simply the difference between navigation mode, navigating using the arrow keys to move from cell to cell to cell, from field to field, from record to record, and editing. If you do a down arrow now, there is no down, so it just goes to the next row and you're back in navigation mode again. Sometimes it's a real pain to have to click to get to edit mode. So let's put the cursor in, I'm going to do a control home. Maybe. There we go. Now let's say that I want to go to this birth date over here and I want to edit it. If I use my arrow keys right now, that's not going to adjust it. I can use my mouse and click. That's one way to get to edit mode. The other way is to press the F2 key on your keyboard. That F2 key for edit works in Excel. I think I taught it to you there, to edit the contents of a cell. It works in Microsoft Word for tables. It'll work again in PowerPoint. And now notice I'm in edit mode, and if I press the home key, I go to the beginning of the cell. If I press the end key, I go to the end of the cell. If I use my arrow keys, I'm moving around inside. That's navigation mode versus edit mode. To get out of navigation mode, once you're in it, just press return, and now you're back in navigation mode again. Knowing the difference between those two can come in real handy. The other thing they test you on during the test is hiding columns. Sometimes when you're entering in data, you've got too much stuff here. Well, when you're in datasheet view, you can hide some of these columns temporarily. To hide them, you simply click and then right click select the column by name across the top, and then right click, and you can see the hide option there. Don't select it just yet. The other way to do it, you can do multiple. I'm going to click outside of it. I'm going to select home or phone, excuse me, and drag, and now I got both of them. Now go ahead and hide them. And they disappear. It's as if they're not there. If you weren't terribly familiar with this database, you wouldn't know that there's data missing. It's real easy to find out. I can go back to design view and go, oh look, there's a couple more fields there. They don't disappear from design view, only from datasheet view. Okay, once again, I'm going to do a control home to get up to the top. And the next thing I want to show you how to do is find records. Again, imagine yourself in the future with 50,000, 100,000 records in this table. You need to find something. Maybe you know the ID, maybe you know the name. Easiest way to find something is put your cursor in the column that you want to search in. So I'm in, let's go into the last name column here. And let's do a search. Two ways to search. You can grab your mouse and point to the binoculars up here and hit the find button. That'll help you search. Or you can press Control F. That's my favorite shortcut key for finding stuff. Does exactly the same thing. Notice when you search, it automatically looks in the current field and it automatically checks the whole field, which means you have to type very, very carefully here. It doesn't match case, so you can go lowercase, uppercase, mix those up, doesn't matter. But you can change these and say that I want to search the entire document. Let's leave it in the field. Or I can search for any part of the field or the start of the field. So you can change those. But by default, they're set to this. Let's see if we can find somebody named Lewis. Type it, find next, and I found him. Now in my notes here it says I'm supposed to look for 22,560. That would have worked as well as long as my cursor is in that column. So when you use this find technique, make sure your insertion point is in the column someplace, and then you're ready to go. We're going to use that finding technique quite a bit. Now that we found Ms. Lewis here, we're going to change some of her data. And so her name is selected, so I'm going to press Tab, Tab, and there her address is now selected, and I know I want to replace the entire address. So I don't need to go into edit mode. It's already all highlighted for me. We want to change it to 83 Highland Street. And so it's very easy to replace existing data if you know you're changing the whole thing, but her email has also changed. So I'm going to tab over to her email address, but it's very similar to this email address, so I want to go into edit mode and tweak this instead of replacing it by typing the whole thing. So I'm going to press the F2 key. Then I'm going to press the home key because I'm now in edit mode to move to the beginning of her email address. And I'm going to take out the dot. And I'm going to add a 5 to the end of Lewis because her address is now plewis5@example.com or org or whatever. So again, a couple of things there, finding records, and then once you find them, you can quickly edit them. And because I've hidden some fields, it makes it a little easier to edit my data. Let's press Control Home again. Should get you, I'm sorry, press Enter to lock that in, then Control Home. Notice if you don't press Enter to lock it in, Control Home takes you to the beginning of the cell that you were editing instead of the beginning of the worksheet. Now I want my other fields back. So to unhide them, point to any column header and choose Unhide, and you'll get a list of the fields. And I'll bet if we wanted to, we could actually hide fields doing this as well, because I could uncheck the first name and it'd probably disappear. But we want these two back. Click on Close, and now they're back again. So it's a nice temporary fix. Let's close the patient table. When it asks you if you want to save, say no, because it's really asking, do you want to save those hidden fields? That's about all we did. The data that we changed, permanent. That's not what it's talking about. Do you want to change the layout We can say no here because we hid fields and then brought them back again, so we really didn't change anything, but Access doesn't know that. Then let's open up the visit table. And using find, Control F, find, I'm still in the first column, visit ID 1635. Should be for a COPD management visit. Control F, type what you want. First of all, put your cursor what field you want, then Control F, 1635. Supposed to change that COPD management visit to influenza. Now your first instinct might be grab your mouse, go over to COPD management and highlight it, but that takes more effort than tab, 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 influenza. If you don't grab the mouse every time you want to change something, sometimes it can be a little bit quicker. Help you get your assignments done a little bit faster. Press enter. Now I'm going to click back in the first column again because that's a little easier and do another find, Control F, 1688. Now that you know how to find, it doesn't mean you have to use it all the time. Maybe it's just as easy to scroll a little bit. But again, with lots and lots of records, if you're not sure, that can really save you some time. I'm going to close my find and replace box. And now I want to delete this record. Now, I think there's even a little piece in the book about deleting data that it's not such a great idea. Most people will archive data. In many of my databases, I have a special field called archived, and if it's an old record that I want to keep, but I want to hide, I can check it as archived and later on hide it using a query. I'll show you how. But they want us to delete this. So delete the record. You click on its navigation box, which is that gray box to the left of it. I'm going to right-click it, and there's delete. There's also a delete up here, but then you have to drop it down, and then you have to pick record, and so on. So I'm just going to right-click and delete, and it says, no, I'm not going to do it. The reason it's complaining is because we turned on referential integrity, and we said you must have a parent record for every child. If I delete this, there's a billing record that's going to be an orphan. It sounds sad, but that's actually the term that's used in database terminology to say I've got a child record that no longer has a parent. I don't know who this bill is for. So we can't do it. Before we can delete it, we have to delete the child. Sounds harsh, but here we go. To delete the child, we could go into the billing table and find the billing and delete that and then delete the visit. Or, see this little plus sign here? Access is helping us out. That little plus sign is your opportunity to show I believe it's called a subrecord or a subtable, and the test does actually ask you to do this, but it uses some convoluted word. It just wants you to expand this, and look, there's the invoice for this visit. And so if I want to, I can delete that first by clicking its row selector. Press the delete key on your keyboard. You sure you know what you're doing? Volker told me to, yes. And now you can click on the row selector for 1688 and delete it. If there had been 10 records there, 10 invoices, people aren't paying, but anyways, if there were 10 invoices there, you can highlight these by dragging down and delete them all at once. So I could have deleted 10 invoices at once and then deleted the visit. But be careful when you're deleting, because why am I deleting this person? Didn't they come in? Didn't they actually have a visit? No, that wasn't them. Okay. But you billed them and it wasn't that. I know, that's why, okay, whatever. Somebody told us to get rid of it, so we got rid of it, but that's really pretty rare. Okay, so much for some of the overhead. Now let's get into queries. Go ahead and close the visits table. Queries, according to the book and according to database theory, allow us to do some things that we can't do with datasheet view. First of all, we can look at data from multiple tables at the same time. When we were looking at that billing table, it's talking about a visit ID. When we were looking at the visit table, it was talking about the patient ID. But who is this? I don't know, patient number 22546. Yeah, right. Like anybody knows what that is. What queries allow us to do is combine the data so that we can get the visit ID and the patient's name and the date of the visit and the reason all in one page. That's its most powerful feature. Using queries, we can sort in ways that we can't sort in datasheet view. We can and we will sort in datasheet view, but there are other ways to do it that are quicker and more powerful using queries. Queries can actually calculate new values. Database theory says if you can calculate it, don't put it in your database. Like your GPA. Why would Midstate want to have your GPA in a database? Because it's going to change in about 5 weeks. Now they have to go through and change 3,000, 4,000 students' records, GPAs? No. It's not really stored. It just looks like it. Whenever they want it, they ask for it. It gets calculated, and they show it to you. It's not stored. Queries can do that. Queries can generate statistics. We can go through this entire table here and say, tell me how many people came in for a wellness visit. Count them. We can even say, tell me how many people came in for each kind of visit. How many influenzas, how many migraines, how many wellness visits, how many hypertension visits. Count them. Can't do that in datasheet view. So there's a lot of power. And we can use queries to update and delete records. We can use a query to find something quickly and delete it, just like we just did. Or change it. If you followed along, go ahead and close all the tables. Let's learn how to create a query. In Unit 1, you created a query by using the wizard. But that's pretty limiting. The wizard lets you pick which fields you want to see, even from multiple tables. But that's about it. We're going to use, in this unit, Query Design tab for everything. So choose Query Design. And the first thing that Access wants to know is, okay, which tables do you want data from for this query? As I mentioned during the overview of queries, we can bring all 3 of these in, and before we're done today, we will. And we can get some data from here and there and here and there and show them all in one answer because of the relational database system that we've built. We tied all these tables together. Remember those foreign keys that I said is a stupid name? They should be called linking fields. They link the tables together. As long as the tables are linked, we can collect data from any table, put it into one answer, merge them all together. Access does all the work for us. In this case, I want to create a query based on the patient table. So select patient, click add, and then close. That's all I need. If we need to, we can change this by clicking on show table, and that box comes back again and we can add some different ones. We'll do that a little bit later. Let's stretch that so we can see all the fields. That's optional. You can also scroll through that. And I'm just following along from the book here. I want the patient ID, and to bring them in, by the way, down at the bottom, let me bring that up so you can see it a little better. This is called the QBE grid, query by example. All databases use a language called SQL, structured query language, to query databases. Access gives you the QBE grid so that you don't have to learn SQL. Except for those programming majors in the room, next semester you go through the torture. And it's not torture, it's just a different language that you have to learn. Access isolates you from that. You don't have to. What fields do you want? Just add them to the grid down here. So we want the last name, or patient ID, I double clicked it. Last name, double click it. Notice it puts it in the next column. City, double click it. And email, double click it. Double clicking is the easiest way to add them to the grid. By the way, when you're taking the test, doing the assignments, you must add these fields in the right order because they check for that. That's the skill that you're supposed to learn. How do I add them in a different order? I skipped some here. I went from top to bottom, but there's no reason you have to. If I now double click first name, it goes over in the right hand column and it just keeps going. And it'll scroll for hours if you need it to. You can add as many fields to this query as you want. But I do want the first name, but I want it after the last name. Here's another way you can add a field. Simply drag it and put it where you want it, right here in between those two. Blink, and the first name goes in between. So if you miss one, you can adjust. In a little while, I'll show you how to move these around once they're in the grid. Run it. To run a query says, give me the answer to my question. I want a list of all the patients, just their names, their cities, and their emails, please. Run, and all the other junk is hidden. Now we could do that same thing in datasheet view, right? By hiding lots of columns. Then we got to remember to turn them back on again. Let's save this. Hit the save button. When you create a query, it's kind of like creating a table. You have to save it. And let's call this patient email. And then close it. Now remember when I say close it, don't close access, close the query right here. Now let's pretend it's 3 weeks, 3 months later, and we've added a bunch of patients and we want a new email list. Now we have to build the query all over again, right? Oh no. You just come over here and say, give me the answer to the question now. Double click, we get the same answer. But if this was 3 months later, we'd have all the new patients in here, and any patients who got deleted, heaven forbid, would be gone. So you can save these questions not only so that I can grade them and the book can grade them, and Sam's can grade them, but so that you can repeat the question, because a lot of times these queries that we create, we need to execute them over and over and over again over time. Very powerful. All right, with that open, let's do a quick search. We want to look for, and that works here, Control F, 22523 as the patient ID. There he is. There she is, Nancy Frazier. Is that the one I want? 22523. Yep. According to my notes here, it says Bennett must have screwed it up. That's right. Notice there's no email address. So now we can cancel, and even though we can't see all the fields, we can still enter data. Let's put in N. Frazier. Just use the same name as hers at example.com. Enter. So using the query, you can delete records if we wanted to try, but if this is a patient, we can't delete a patient that's got visits, that's got billing. That chain of deletes could be really long. I can't delete a patient until I delete all their billing, but I can't delete all their billing until I delete all their visits. Yeesh. But we can also modify data, and the actual table itself gets changed. What you're looking at here is not the actual table. This is not the patient's table. It's an answer to a question that's based on the patient's table. Database terminology, this is called a view. Got this big, huge pile of data. We're kind of narrowing in on a piece of it, a view. Anything you change in the view is changed in the table as well. So let's go to the patient table, close the query, go to the patient table and find 22523. There's Nancy Frazier again, and her email is still there. So any changes you make when you're in a query in a view also affect the main table. Just keep that in mind. All right, let's close that query and create another one. Always in Design View. Create tab, Design View. This time we're going to use 2 tables. I want information from the patient table and from the visits table. You can select them both by control clicking them, or I'm just going to drag and touch them both till they both turn blue, or you can add them one at a time. Doesn't matter. Add, close. In the last unit, we defined a relationship between those 2 tables. Because they're related, we can select data from both of them in one query. So let's grab first the city from the patient, and if you want to, you can make it bigger. First the city, then the first name, then the last name. I'm just double clicking them in the order that I say them. And now I want some information from the visits table. This cannot be done using datasheet view, but it can be using queries. I want the visit date. When did they come in? Double click it. Notice it adds it as if it belonged, and it does, because they're linked together. And why did they come in? The reason. And we can mix and match as many of these as we want, as long as the tables are related. If they're not related, you can create a relationship here, but that's beyond the scope of this course. Run it. And now I get to see that Volker Gall came in with a migraine, probably because of his office class. I can see where he lives, and I can see all that information in one place. I can see the name and the reason. And if I wanted to, and later we will, we'll add billing to this. Have we billed him for that visit yet? Give him a new migraine for the billing. This is the power of queries right here. We can put the data back together again. We split it. Why do we have patients over here and visits over here? So that if one patient comes in 25 times, we don't have to type their name in 25 times, just their ID number. And if they change their name, we don't have to change it in 25 locations, just one. All kinds of reasons beyond the scope of this class. Trust me, this is a better way to build databases. Probably going to want to resize these columns so they fit just like you do in a table. You click the cell, the little box in the upper left-hand corner, select everything, pick the right edge of any column, double click, and they all resize. But you might have to scroll through and see if there's anything hiding that's bigger than what you have on the screen. Looks like West Hartford is going to be just fine. So everything fits, and I've resized it. Let's save that as patient visits. So hit the save button. Be right with you. If we want to change this query, as long as it's still open, we can switch back to design view the same way we did when we were building tables. We built the table. If we needed to get back to the structure, we hit the design button. It's over here. It's on the home tab. If you can't see it, it's because you're not on the home tab. You can also use these little guys down here in the lower right-hand corner. This is datasheet view or the answer view, and this is design. That one's design view. Looks like a little triangle. Those will work. And if all else fails, you can always right-click the query. It's over here, patient visits, and go to design view that way. Any of those techniques will work. I go to the big triangle up here in the left when notice it's switched to view now. By the way, these two, for the purposes of this class, are interchangeable. Run and view the answer mean the same thing. This is kind of a preview. Gives me the same answer. And then I just click on it again to go back to design view. One more time, let's go back to datasheet view or the run view here. And I want to show you that using the little arrows, the drop-down arrows along the top here, we can do some things like sort. Oh, cool. So we can rearrange them. Go ahead and sort by city. And it just reorders all your records so that they're sorted by city. We could then say, you know what, let's see the most recent visits first. So I want to sort by date, but I want the newest to the oldest. Notice when you do that, your sort by city goes away. Even though there's still a little arrow up here, it's not sorted by city anymore. Now it's sorted by date with the most recent first, April 16 and so on down. What if I want to do both? Can't. Not in datasheet view. Most books would recommend that at this point, and if you want to, you can, remove the sort, meaning whatever sorts I have on here in datasheet view, get rid of them, because if you save this, the sort is saved. And maybe you want that. You can remove it. Now let's go back to design view and learn how to sort here. To sort in design view, and this is generally a better idea because then the sort is saved with your query, and if somebody else runs that query and messes with the sort, when they leave, the next time they come back in, it'll be resorted the way you want it to. I want to sort by city, ascending. There's a little sort row right underneath the name of the patient, or the name of the table, patient. Use the sort row, ascending, and while we're at it, within the cities, I want to sort descending. So for each city, show me the visits, but show me the most recent ones first. If you need to, you can turn the sort off by dropping one of those down again and choosing none, and it'll go away. Or you can just delete that, I think, the descending. But if we run this now, notice we get a little different answer than we did before. All the Bloomfields are still together, but within Bloomfield, they're sorted in descending order. And then within Hartford, They're sorted in descending order by date. So using the datasheet design view or the query design view, you can sort by multiple fields in different ways. It is possible in datasheet view to sort by multiple fields as long as they're all ascending. As soon as you try to use two where one's ascending, one's descending, you can't do it anymore. Like I tell my programmers, if there's three different ways to do it and one works everywhere, that's the one I'm going to use. The one that works all the time, everywhere, is the version that we use and sort using design view. In addition to sorting in datasheet view here, we can also filter. So if I wanted to, I could drop this down and say, I only want to see Bloomfield. I could turn all these off and then turn on Bloomfield. Doing that, and click on OK, and it filters everybody else out. That's one way to filter. If you want to clear filters, and this sneaks in on the test, and I didn't see it hardly anywhere else. If you want to clear filters, you go to Advanced, and you clear all the filters out. You get everything back. Oh, wait, there was a toggle button. No, we're getting there. Another thing you can do, if you drop this down, there are text filters off on the side. We can pick equals and say, give me everybody who equals something. Give me any name that begins with, let's just do this, C. Choose begins with, and first name begins with C, and there's all my Christinas and Cheneys and Kathys and so on. And all kinds of power here. This toggle filter button says, show me all the records again. But if you click it, it remembers the last filter you applied and puts it back again. So you can show them and then put it back again and show them, put it back again. Let's clear all the filters out. Another way the book likes to have you filter is this is called filter by example. Let's scroll down until you see which one do I want here? West Hartford. And just pick one, any one of them, just click in it. At that point, you can filter by selection, which is this button up here. I've selected something. At this point, I can drop it down and notice it gives me all kinds of choices here. Do you want all the ones that equal Hartford or the ones that do not equal West Hartford, that contain, that do not contain? I want the ones that equal West Hartford. Lots of different ways to filter, but again, we're doing it in datasheet view. I see this as a temporary filter. Just real quick, I got a question. I want to see just the West Hartford. Okay, I'm done. Turn them off. We can also filter in design view. For right now, let's close that one and not save it. This time it's talking about changes to the design of the query. What changes? All this filtering I've been doing. Do I want to save those? If you say yes, then my West Hartford filter will stick, and the next time I come in, I can toggle filters and West Hartford will be coming back again. The book always has you say yes. The tests always say yes because that's how they know you did it right when they grade it. I'm going to go to the book real quick. I'm on page 142 now. We are now going to start applying filters using datasheet view. When we use datasheet view, we have to use some relational operators. Sound familiar, programmers? They're all just learned about this in one of their programming classes. Relational operators are used to compare. There's an equality operator. We hardly ever use that in Access. Is this field equal to Bloomfield? If you want Bloomfield, skip the equal sign, just say Bloomfield. You're good. Is it not equal to? Notice that's a less than sign and a greater than sign right next to each other. If we're talking about numbers or dates, we can say less than or equal to. The one they don't talk about in the book that's very handy is between. You simply say between 10 and 15 and you get all the 10s, 15s, 11s, 13s, etc. Between does include the endpoints. There's an in, don't need that for any of the assignments that I know of. In between the parentheses, you can make a list of things. Give me any of the shirts that are red, green, or blue. Put red, green, or blue in there with commas, and it'll give you all of them. And finally, there's a like, and that does pattern matching. Sounds complicated, but I'm going to show it to you. It's really not hard, but again, I don't think you need it for the assignment. So let's create a new query and put some of those to use. These are called exact match queries because we're going to match exactly. Creating a new query in design view. This time I want to use patients and visits again. So I'm just dragging to select those two. Click add, close, should have both of them. And I'm following the book here. Some of these fields are kind of redundant, but let's follow along here. Last name, first name, phone, address, city, email. From the other table, and by the way, I've been working top to bottom because the book told me to, and then left to right because the book told me to. You can pick a couple from here, and then a couple from there, and a couple more from here, and a couple more from here. You can mix and match these as if they were all in the same table now because they're related. Use them however you want. Visit ID, visit date, and reason. Now in my case, I have the property sheet open. If you have one of these, simply click the X to get it out of the way, get a little more screen real estate, and now I got just about everything on the screen. You can shrink and expand those columns down there in the QBE grid if you have to, but most of the time I just leave them and scroll. You can resize the windows if you need to. I don't usually do that. I'm doing it here, so it's a little easier for you to see what I'm going to do. We use the sort row to sort. Now we're going to use the criteria row to specify criteria that the data has to meet in order to be included in the answer. I only want Bloomfield cities. So let's go to the city column in the criteria row, right underneath that check mark, and type in Bloomfield. This is not case sensitive, so I'm usually lazy. I type it lowercase. If you press tab, Access helps you out because that's text. You're supposed to have quotes around it. Access says, let me take care of that for you. It'd be nice if C# did that. Notice you don't have to say equal to Bloomfield. If you're doing an exact match for equality, just type what you're looking for. You don't need an equal sign. If we run this, we get kind of the same effect we had before. The city, Bloomfield, is all we see. Let's save that as Bloomfield Patients. Save. Now, if this is a query called Bloomfield Patients and I want to run it next month, who do you think I want to see? The Bloomfield Patients. Well, if they're all from Bloomfield and we've now verified that this works, why do I even need to see that? I don't. So let's go back to design view. And I can't delete, I can delete it, but I don't want to delete it because it's what provides my criteria. It's what filters my rows. But I don't want to see it in the answer. So you turn off the checkbox next to show. It's just a checkbox. You can always bring it back later. We'll do it. Okay. But for right now, run or view, either one. That's another clue for you, by the way. If you're taking the exam, it's very annoying. I'm used to pressing enter to say, good, I'm done, go. No, read carefully. That's my advice for you on the exam. Read extremely carefully. I failed it the first time because I was just I gotta get this done, cranked through it, thought I knew how to do everything. I did. I know how to do everything. I didn't read very carefully. Got a lot of them wrong. Read very carefully. At the end, many of them say, run the query when you're done. Hit the run button, and then it'll go, oh, that's the right answer. If you just hit enter, then they go, nope, you're in the wrong row, wrong, try again. Hate that. Okay, so we got Bloomfield. Now if we wanted to, we could start filtering. We could start sorting from here. We can mix and match this stuff however we want. And notice that the city field is gone. These are still the only records. There's still only 14 records. There's still only Bloomfield, even though the city doesn't show up. Back to design view. Click the triangle. The boss looked at that and said, you know what, all that patient information, that's really good, but I want the visit information in front. Can we rearrange them? You can rearrange them in datasheet view and they're temporary. She wants it permanent. So I'm going to grab these fields and select them just like you do just about any other column. Go to the top, you get a black downward pointing arrow. And I'm going to do all three of them at once. Could do them one at a time. Just going to drag to the right. I got all three. Let go of the mouse. And then point anywhere in the black, actually at the top, and drag. You get a black arrow or a black line and drop. And now they're done. And if we run it, the query displays everything in a different order. You know how to resize if you need to. Go ahead and close that. When you close it, it says, hey, you moved those things around. You want to save that? Oops. Yeah, good idea. Save that. Access protects you. Another very common thing is to say, you know, that Bloomfield patients, that's pretty good, but I need another query that's very similar to that. You could start over and bring all those fields in, but instead we're going to copy it. Easiest way to copy anything. This is another thing that I found kind of goofy in the test. They have you copy a form in the queries chapter. Nice face. Exactly. What? Doesn't matter. You do it the same way. You right-click whatever it is you want to copy. Bloomfield patients. Copy it to the clipboard. Point in the middle of nowhere down here. Right-click and paste it. And it'll say, what do you want to call the new one? Works for forms, works for queries, works for tables, you name it. Maybe that's their point, but seems to me it's chapter 3. Let's do queries. What do we want to call this? According to my little cheat sheet here, I want to call it earlier visits. And now I have a new query called earlier visits. Notice all the queries are kept together. That's usually convenient. Book shows you how to rearrange these a little bit if you need to. I want to modify early visits. Right now it's an exact duplicate of Bloomfield. Right click it is the way I do it, so I don't have to go way up there. Right click it, design view, and you're immediately in design view and you can start tweaking stuff here. We don't want people who came this year, we want people who came last year. We're pretending it's the year 2016 already. So I only want people who have visited early, and that's people who visited before January of this year. Okay, now I need to figure out how to translate that. Before January, I have to use the symbols on this page. Which one of those is going to help me do before January? Well, they even have an example here. Look at that, except it's 99. Less than. So if you're not sure, you're going to have to find your way through this table. It's probably one of the first 6. Right, that'll help you get what you need. We already did an equal, not equal, less than, and greater than. So we need a less than in the visit date. And the date I want is 1/1/2016. I'm too lazy to type the 2016. I'm pretty sure Access is going to take care of that for me. Not only that, but Access says, in the Access language, whenever you actually type dates in, you have to surround them with pound signs. Let me take care of that for you. I never type them. I always say thank you very much, or at least think, oh, I forgot that. It always does it. I never type dates with pound signs. However, if you decide you want to make this 2015, don't delete the pound sign, because if you edit it and there's a pound sign at the beginning, Access expects one on the end. So if you're going to go in there and change that, make sure you leave the pound signs alone. Or just wipe it out, start over. That works too. So notice now also I have 2 criteria. I have the city of Bloomfield, and in the same row I have another criteria that says it has to be 2015. Remember, there were 14 records when we ran it for Bloomfield. If we run it again, there should be a few less. Only the ones in 2015. When you put 2 criteria in the same row, back to design view, I have 2 criteria in the same row. They're treated as AND conditions, and as programmers can tell you, AND conditions mean both of them must be true. And you can have multiple, 3, 4 of them. All of them have to be true in order for the record to be in the answer. we said, give me a list of everybody who lives in Bloomfield and visited before 1/1/15 or 16. That's what that says. So only those people are included. This is another thing they do on the test to you. They say, you know what, this is a different query. It's not about Bloomfield. I just want people who came in 2015. All of them. Oh, all right. Then I come in here and I clicked on Bloomfield. It's highlighted. I'm going to delete it. I now want to see the city again, so I turn it back on again. And then the boss says, you know what, put that before the email. So I click the top of it and drag it in front of email. And once again, the boss is happy. Let's run that. Now we should get a whole bunch of records, but all of them before 2000. Where'd my visit? Oh, there it is. All of them before 2015. 16, excuse me. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll do another example. That last query, at least initially, was an AND query. I had to meet both criteria in Bloomfield and 2015. That's an AND condition. When we come back, we'll learn about the other one, which is an OR condition. Let's take 10 minutes and do that.